What's up, everybody? Nick Powills, publisher of 1851franchise.com, talking children's education. Coming up next on Meet the Zor. All right, Marlene, before we get into Seashore Academy, first I want to start with you. How did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise story? What's the backstory?
So I'm a mom who started this in my kitchen table, and it was something I built, blood, sweat, and tears, and learned a lot along the way. Figured out a lot of different things, employment contracts and curriculum and teacher contracts. And so I had a lot of other people in different areas of the state of California reaching out and asking me if I could start up different campuses in their counties and in their areas. And didn't want to expand to all those places myself, but really wanted to empower other parents in the same situation who needed an educational option for their children to do the same without necessarily having to go through the steep learning curve I went through. So that was it. Basically just trying to respond to lots of organic requests from other moms and dads just like me and my husband who, again, learned through the school of hard knocks what not to do, and just had been at it for a number of years.
Okay, let's unpack the starting point. So when you're sitting at the kitchen table, take me before that. Like, what was driving you to say, I even want to create a business, I want to start a business on my own? And take me through that journey too, and how you even get to sitting at the kitchen table working through this.
Yeah, I really I didn't really want to start a school. When I first started this, I was really looking for a school for my son, and was just having a really hard time finding what I wanted. I really wanted something with small class sizes. They gave him a lot of individual attention that wasn't playing the big money game in terms of, I didn't mind paying for private education, but I didn't really want to expose him or my daughters who are younger, to platinum, parking spots and galas and exposing the kids to all of some of what we have in Orange County private school culture. And I didn't want them doing 4 hours of homework a night by the time they got to middle school. Some of these top private schools are great, but then they kind of ruin the kids' childhood. I wanted them to love learning and be a kid and, have great academics, but come home and play sports and go to youth groups and, be a kid, have time to read and play. So I thought I'd start a public charter school. And so I thought I'd homeschool for a year with a private tutor while I got that going. And I did start a public school. It wasn't a charter, it was a district school, but with all the red tape that we had to go through, and we had to deal with 32 kids in the class, and we couldn't hire the teachers we wanted to hire. We had to hire top of the union line, not the young, energetic, fun teachers that we got to hire in my homeschool. People started asking to join my homeschool program in my house. And then when I launched the public school program, then people just said, can we just keep this going? And I underestimated how hard that would be. I was like, sure, how hard can that be? I'll just keep this going. We'll just pool our money and, start it as a private school. It was a little harder than I anticipated, but that's how it started.
Just out of curiosity.
So I was I wanted it because I wanted to be my first client. So sorry.
Yeah. I'm sure at some point, because all the foundational elements of what you're trying to create at that point is built on something better for you, the parent, and for you and for your children. Mm-hmm. At some point, you obviously have to look at it as a business. Did you have conflicts internally when now all of a sudden, like, the business model had to be turned up? Because if you have to build a business that's going to turn to a franchise, like, was that a struggle at all, or did you start having the same feelings that you were having as a parent as a franchisor? Like, there's got to be something better.
I mean, my kids still go to Seashore. So as I was running the business, I still wanted the quality, the small, we've kept our class sizes really small, I mean, it might make more business sense to stuff more kids into classes if you look at just the numbers, but we're attracting kids all the time and parents all the time because they want the same thing I want, which is small class sizes for their kids. So, if we continue to deliver quality, people will come and they're going to tell their friends. So that's sort of been the premise of it. If it's something that's really a quality option that I would want for myself and that our clients are, wanting for their friends and so forth. And so that's, I didn't really see it as a conflict between what I wanted and what's good for the business. I did just run into things that, when I wanted to go into franchising, I thought, gosh, if I had known that I could have just bought a manual that had teacher contracts already done, that protected me, how to start an LLC, how to get city permits, how to deal with insurance, how to bill tuition. One of the hardest things for me as a mom, whose friends were enrolling in this program, was charging them tuition. Some of these parents would say, "Oh, we're taking off to Hawaii for 2 weeks. Do we have to pay the full month?" Or, we got divorced halfway through the year. I want his dad to pay. And then he'd say, I want his mom to pay. And then I'd be the one stuck not getting paid, or the teacher, and I still have to pay the teacher. Right. So it's structuring the contract so that we know who the financially responsible parent is ahead of time. Those are all the sorts of things that I had to learn through the School of Hard Knocks that when people started asking, can you open up in Santa Rosa? And I was like, I can't open up in Santa Rosa, but I can show you how to open up in Santa Rosa.
That's a real fascinating answer, because if I think about traditional franchising or accelerated franchising today, it is man in a van, which if you think of the obstacles to become man in the van, having a home service business, it's the obstacles aren't that big. Like you or I could go buy a van tomorrow at the auto dealer, get it wrapped, and say we clean carpets. But what you're talking about in your business model, like you were like, holy cow, like there's a lot of things that go into starting a business of this size and magnitude and impact. All right, let me build the blueprint. And therefore, what's really fascinating, if I look at the value of the franchise fee in today's franchise industry, which I'm sure you and I could have a long conversation about that, most brands don't give a value for the franchise fee. You've really engineered a return for the cost of getting involved in your business. So just to frame the business side of the conversation, how many units, how many franchisees do you have now? Paint the picture. Where's the business at today?
We're new at the franchising. So we have two, and being very selective about it. I even when Seashore was very small, I didn't want growth just for growth's sake. I wanted to make sure that we had the right students and the right families. And we're sort of applying the same thing with the franchisees. We really don't want somebody coming at it just for the numbers. We want to make sure that they're like-minded in philosophy and so forth, in terms of the educational value, in terms of the homework load, to a certain extent, sort of the freedom. We're not political, but we do honor personal choice, personal responsibility, and individual freedom. And so we want to make sure that the franchisees are like-minded on those fronts so that the philosophy continues. So, we're like, I think as we've grown and now, we have a like-minded student body and we have a like-minded clientele. So then it's grown organically, and I foresee the same thing happening with this growth as well.
I have what I predict to be your answer, but I'm going to ask a question anyway. Has this helped solve the quote unquote teacher crisis that exists because you've built a culture that the teachers are happier?
We are attracting top talent and teachers who are sick and tired of what they're seeing in other schools. And we're also attracting these young, energetic teachers who don't want anything to do with what they're seeing in public schools. And so that's really been my sweet spot as teachers, just going, I get to teach 15 kids, in uniform, who say the Pledge of Allegiance, who look me in the eye and say, good morning, and thank you for teaching me today. And I don't have to be teaching in front of a computer, and I don't have to be, these kids aren't all zoned out on Chromebooks all day because we do everything in person. We don't allow Chromebooks in the classroom at all. We don't allow the kids to have any screens at all. So 0 cell phones, 0 tablets. We want everyone talking to each other face to face, book discussions, hands-on science experiments. So the teachers don't have to deal with kids zoned out on Chromebooks, messaging each other and playing games when they're supposed to be in school. They get to sit in a circle and discuss a book, or do their cursive handwriting, pencil and paper, or blow something up in science. So they get to actually do what they want to do, which is connect with kids. And a natural born teacher, you talk to them, they had a teacher who made a huge difference in their lives. They want that human connection. They don't want to be teaching 32 kids per hour, all behind Chromebooks that they have to test into state standards and then check out, and the kids are dealing with all the electronics.
I love that. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and this message connected with me. He said what he loves most about his podcast is the cell phone has to go off because they're filming, he said that's the only time where the technology is gone and it's hyper focused in on conversation. And so no matter what the views are on his podcast, like the reality is it's a tremendous insight into relationship building that's been removed from so much of our life. And here, even for the teacher, like the teacher wants connection. That's part of the reason they got into education in the first place. And now your environment's saying, yeah, we're going to get you connected, which in turn is going to give you the best fighting chance to give that child education. So I love that.
Right.
Now, obviously, in children's education, you're going to get pooled in with the Goddards or the Primroses, but you're far different from that. You're actually a school. Do you feel like that's, as you continue to grow this thing, that's part of what you're going to have to educate, is that this is a real school, it's not daycare?
Yeah, we can. I mean, I feel like people are finding us because they want it as parents, and then they're wanting to franchise it. And I think one of the things, we're redefining education, and it's making more sense to people because now they can work. Most of our clients are small business owners themselves, or they work for a small business and they have a hybrid schedule themselves. And so they understand the value that we offer, which is your child can go to school 3 days a week. We have our core academic days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and our entrepreneurship days, Monday, Friday. And we allow people to, so if they want to work from home, if they want to take their kid with them and travel, if they athlete, we have a lot of middle school kids who travel for travel ball. We've got top ice skaters, gymnasts. We've got a couple professional go-kart racers. So they need a flexible schedule, and oftentimes the parents have flexible schedules. So we have a very robust curriculum that doesn't need to be done in a traditional school schedule. And that's resonating with a lot of parents who, can work 40-hour weeks, 2 hours here, 2 hours there, 6 hours of stretch, some from home, some in the airplane, some in the office. They're understanding that while in-person education is great, it doesn't need to be at the same desk with 32 kids 5 days a week, every day, every week, for it to be effective.
I'm curious on your opinion on this. Like if you and let's just say 10 other parents go in a room, mm-hmm. and we say, all right, everybody on the count of three, talk about their most impactful educational moments. Most likely it's going to go to some experiential learning, whether it was an internship or hands-on. And so that's us that's been there, done that. But for whatever reason, when we've gone through this and got to the end of an education and found the value, and even like the true value of college is far beyond the books. It's about self-sustainability and community and culture and connections and finding yourself as an adult. So we know what the answer is, but for whatever reason, we haven't pushed that all the way back to the level that you're doing. Because what you're talking about, like the reality is sports can be education for them. Or the things that fit into the family life can be education. Going to Hawaii on a vacation can be education. Those are probably the moments, if any of us look back at our childhood, those are the most impactful moments, maybe not deep in a book. So because we know this, why haven't we changed education? Is it because education is ultimately being blockbustered, that they are Blockbuster and the world's Netflix?
That's a great, that was a question I was asking myself when my kids were really young, because I was reading Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. looking at the traditional school system, saying, okay, there's data out there, so the valedictorians don't do any better than anyone else. So that, and all the harmful effects of, piles of homework that just deaden the brain and make us into rote memorization, regurgitation machines. So what's the point, right? If we're supposed to learn through doing, if we're supposed to, real grit, Angela Lee Duckworth talks about how real successful adults has nothing to do with race or gender, or even economic background. It has to do with grit, so if we're supposed to develop grit in kids. How come we're not doing this? How come we still have this archaic 1850s, you know, you know, educational model to prepare us for the factories? And I really, I don't have a traditional education background, but all the funding, is really based on this archaic model. And then as parents, you get into this, your kids 5 and 6, and you don't want your kid to feel left out. You don't really want to homeschool and go it alone, because who wants to do that? And so you end up either, going to the public school down the street because you live in a nice neighborhood and it's a good school, and at least there are all these fun things like arts and theater and sports to kind of make up for the fact that the school's not ideal. Or you pay and you go to private school, and people fortunate enough to do that can do that. So I really wanted a third option. Like, what about, a homeschool hybrid? What about so that's where Seashore is the unicorn.
Yeah.
We're teaching entrepreneurship. We're teaching financial management. We're teaching Toastmasters, public speaking. We're getting rid of the screens, and we're really trying to put power back to the parents. If parents want a class, they can suggest it. And if enough, we put it out there. If we've got residents with it, we'll add it. We really want parents to be in charge of the kids' education, not the state.
So two quick comments. One is when you're talking, I remember seeing a movie called Accepted a long time ago. That it's funny because that's the whole premise of the movie was like, we're going to take back education and make it what we want. If I think back on my own education, I mean, I was destined to be an entrepreneur. Nothing was pulling out the entrepreneur in me, and that's probably because the way school was structured. But I was like, everything that I thought about was, how do I build business? I wrote a book, and the premise is I go back to pain points, and eventually pain points turn to fuel. This is the point that I'm making. What connected me with elementary school was going to school and on the first day being called fat, which I didn't understand what that word meant, but that turned into a very painful journey that I then had to battle through. Now I kept on leaving the fat behind and doing entrepreneur stuff, but there was no structure to say, you might not look as skinny as everybody else, but you look very skinny in the entrepreneur side because you're really good at it. And nobody was there to lift that up. And what you're saying in the way that you've structured this is it's allowing parents can propose a class. Fantastic. If your kid wants to do something or has this dream, why are we squashing it? The entrepreneurial side, even if you don't become an entrepreneur, just understanding that general theme of creativity, execution, and grit, I think is so deeply valuable. So anyway, the point is, everything you're saying connects with me. I think, time and patience is probably the most important ingredient here, because it will take time for more people to jump into that train of thought. But again, if we did a dinner party right now with people all our similar ages, I think they would all agree, like, what you're doing is right. It just takes time to get others to think that way.
Yeah, we've had a lot of residents with parents going, "Gosh, I wish I had financial management.
Yeah.
Before I got into credit card debt in college, I want my kid to learn that." And then I think at our entrepreneurship fairs, when parents come and they see their kids who have started perfume lines, they see the kids who started skincare lines with sparkly creams and logos and bottles. They see the boys who've created marshmallow launchers and are trying to sell the product and learning the difference that a great product doesn't necessarily mean a great business, right? A great lesson to learn when you're 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So they're seeing these products and services that the kids have teamed up to build, and they're seeing the failures, they're seeing the joy in that, and they're saying yes. So that's really exciting. And it's and the more that's come out in the past 3 years about mental health, all the tragedies that have occurred, I think there's more awareness around the harms the addictive behaviors that are built through screen time in young children. So more parents are really like-minded and wanting to keep their kids safe from those things as long as possible. So we're seeing a lot of, we're waitlisted for most of our grades in our Newport campus, and growing. So we're just, I think a lot of parents are saying yes, and they're telling their friends, and that's where we're getting these requests for people who want the same thing. We're not for everyone, but I do believe in options, and I do think that parents need to have choices.
I love that.
Yeah.
So just to frame the franchise side, the cost to get in is what right now? Not franchise fee. What's the total all-in cost right now?
Well, we have a sliding scale. So one of the things, that I was really helped me is, you can start off and rent a huge, big facility. Or you can start off really small and rent a couple classrooms at your church, local church. And so when I first started, I actually started off in the Boys and Girls Club storage room in Costa Mesa. So I found a Boys and Girls Club that was willing to rent me a room. It was a storage room. It didn't even have heat. It didn't have electricity, but it had a beautiful window with a park right there. And I gutted the room and we painted it and made it into a beautiful one-room classroom. So we allow people to start from humble beginnings because that makes it I don't want people to overextend themselves. And it really, we really want people in for the right reason, that they're there because they love kids and they love what they're doing. And we've been able to build from there. So we don't make people go out and rent, what we have here in Newport Beach, this huge campus and security guards and huge facilities right away. So again, every geography's rent is a little bit different in every zip code. So.
Well, I think that's on brand too. I mean, based on what you said on the educational side, I think that's a different approach to franchising, and what you're saying is about find the right people who have the right grit and hustle and have the dream and aligned cultural and values, and let's let them go. And I think that's awesome. Is there anything else you want a candidate or someone that's watched this to know about the business opportunity before we sign off?
Yeah. Thank you. I think there's a lot of, you talked about your passion and you wrote a book. We have a lot of athletes out there, parents of athletes, and who sometimes struggle with, everyone else in their ice hockey club is going to online learning. I want them to be able to train with their club and travel, but I don't really want them to learn online. And we have an incredible program that's in-person learning that can be condensed around a training schedule. So that if you've got a top athlete or your child has that chance to, really train hard in middle school to try and make that high school team, I really want to encourage kids in middle school who have a passion. If it's acting, if it's dance, if it's basketball, if it's football, whatever that is, I don't want to crush that. The middle school years are so hard. I think it's cool if a kid has a passion, that we can create an in-person education around that.
I think that's awesome. I mean, and this could be a hours long conversation, but what I find fascinating, if I think about the workforce today, and COVID probably accelerated this too. I had someone 2 years out of college, like, look, I haven't had a break in many years. I'm just going to take off some time. I'm like, I haven't had a break in 43 years. I've never felt that way, but it's interesting because it's almost like the way that we've set the structure up, it creates burnout, which creates frustration, which means when you hit the workplace, it's kind of, middle finger to the working for the man. And now we're asking them to conform to different models. And the reality is the work world is shifting in many ways, whether that's the 15-minute city or it's flexible working where you're coming in a few days a week, but you still have some flexibility around your schedule, or the experimenting with a 4-day work week. Like, there's so many things that are happening up here. And if we don't start doing it down here, then there's going to be this giant disconnect for a long time of those entering the workplace. And we're going to be left with poor customer service and poor everything else, which then that's going to just create levels of frustration. So totally believe in everything you're saying. I think it's awesome. I'm very much looking forward to seeing where your story goes. And I'm grateful that we got a chance to talk to each other.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate the opportunity.
Marlene. For Marlene, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor. Take care, everybody.